Hi, hello, my name is Gomer Joseph. I hope you've all been having a great day so far. Welcome back to another True Crime Tuesdays video. If you are new, I welcome you. This month, I'll pretty much be doing something pretty different this year. So it is February, which is also Black History Month, which is a month I clearly appreciate. To me, it is a time to reflect on how Black Americans overcame the obstacles that were right in front of them. Not only should we reflect on the triumphs of Black people in this nation, but we should also remember the tragedies. Countless horrific crimes were committed to Black people in this nation, and it definitely should never ever be hid under the rug. Not only do I want to use this month to speak about those crimes, but I also want this, I want every single one of us to learn lessons from them. Let's keep in mind that Black history is American history, so I also wouldn't be opposed to covering these sort of cases throughout the year if they do come to my attention. Today, I'll be discussing the tragic case of Harriette and Harriette Moore. This case truly broke my heart as I was researching it, and I'm just baffled that I never really heard about this case at all before. Sadly, it is one of those tragedies which have gradually been forgotten, but should have definitely never have been forgotten. I encourage you all to do your own research with this case and not to just look at my video for all of the information. Here we go. Harriette Moore was born on November 18th of 1905 in Houston, Florida, to parents Johnny and Rosa Moore. Now, for Harry's father, Johnny, sadly, he would pass away due to poor health when Harry was only 9 years old. So shortly after his father's death, Harry moved to Jacksonville, Florida. Now, the part that Harry moved to in Jacksonville was a very prosperous Black town. And, it's just really amazing to see that he was surrounded by so many Black prosperous people around the Jim Crow era. And he lived in Jacksonville with his aunts. 3 years later, he would move back with his mother to finish high school. Harry was described as someone who did love outdoor activities. He was quiet. He was known to be intelligent. Harry did very well in school, and after graduating college, he became a teacher and principal, where he would later meet Harriette Sims. Harriette Sims was born on June 19th of 1902 in West Palm Beach, Florida, to parents David and Annie Sims. Now, Harriette, she came from a big family, but sadly, because I know for what I've known about others, when you have a big family, you're really close, but as for Harriette, it wasn't really like that. She sadly had a strained relationship with her mother, and Harriette had two sisters named Valerie and May, but also had four brothers named George, Arnold, Rupert, and David Jr. Harriette was known to be shy and forgiving. Growing up, she worked with her father during the summers, and as an adult, she became an elementary school teacher while also working for an insurance company. After Harry and Harriette got together, they pretty much became inseparable. The two would soon get married, but would keep their marriage a secret for 6 months since they knew that Harriet's mother wouldn't approve of the union. When the knowledge of their marriage was out in the open, they were able to build their own house and had two daughters together named Annie and Juanita. In 1934, Harry got involved in the civil rights movement by starting a NAACP chapter or group in Brevard County in Florida. Now, of course, the NAACP, it was already an established organization, but he was just pretty much the leader of that certain sect in the area that he was living in. Now, as he was working in this position in the NAACP, he was helping to organize this organization around the state of Florida. Doing activist work in the NAACP, Harry would investigate lynchings, he spoke against police brutality, fought for voter rights for Black Americans, and even fighting to help black teachers to obtain equal pay. Now keep in mind, this is the 30s and the 40s. Harry got involved with the NAACP and the civil rights movements in the South, especially during the Jim Crow era, which was extremely dangerous for a black person to get involved in back in the day. Because of his role as a civil rights activist, it did cost him his job as the principal at the school, and was followed after attending NAACP meetings. Despite getting fired as a principal, despite being followed by random people, Harry was still brave and bold. He fought hard to make sure to provide his children and black Americans with the rights that they deserved as Americans. Despite the danger that Harry placed himself and even his family in, Harriette stood right beside him. Out of all of the activism that Harry was involved in, there is pretty much one notable case that he made himself known with. This case was known as the case of the Groveland Four. So on July 16th of 1949, there are these two white couples named Willie and Norma Paget. She claimed that one night, at that night of July 16th of 1949, she claimed that she and her husband were in the car and had car troubles, but as they stopped, 4 black men were in the car and stopped behind to help them. But according to Norma, those 4 black guys, just out of nowhere, something overcame them to be violent and to attack both her and her husband. Because of these claims, 4 guys were arrested. The names of these guys were named Ernest Thomas, Charles Greenlee, Sam Shepard, and Walter Irvin. 10 days after the arrest, Ernest Thomas escaped and was approached by police. The police department was headed by Sheriff Willis McCall, who fought hard for segregation. According to the police, Ernest fled, and I kid you not, 1,000 white men caught up with Ernest and shot at Ernest 400 times. Like, they pointed out that he ran away, so why shoot him instead of trying to go ahead and capture him and make him face jail time if you feel like he's guilty of this crime? To no surprise, Ernest sadly lost his life. Now, I'm really going to go ahead and try to really condense this, but this case is very important to Harry and Harriet's case, so please just bear with me, because you might be thinking to yourselves, if Ernest was innocent, then why would he run? But again, this is the 1940s in the Jim Crow South. If I'm not mistaken, jurors back then felt like you were guilty according to the color of your skin. On top of that, black people were known to be lynched when they were found guilty, even if they really weren't guilty. It seems like I was right, because they were going to be sentenced to death anyway. So overall, Ernest was most likely running for his life. On top of that, white mobs in Florida began to burn down black neighborhoods after this alleged incident, which is something, for as long as I live, I know for sure I will never understand this sort of mindset. You have the remaining 3 guys in custody, so why go after other black people who had nothing to do with this situation at all? But again, back in the day, a lot of racist white people had a habit of burning down black neighborhoods because they were clearly bored with their lives. Harry Moore gets word of this, so he wrote to the governor about these burnings in black neighborhoods, but no legal action was taken. Shocker. Since there was no legal action, Harry did what he did best. He would go ahead and try to get an appeal for the remaining 3 while also investigating this situation further. What Harry found out was that these three teens, yes, teenagers, these three teenagers were beaten into a confession. But according to Sheriff McCall, the one who is all for segregation, we should just simply accept his word when he says that he denied beating up those three teenagers. While working to get these appeals and working with the well-known civil rights lawyer Thurgood Marshall, they were able to get this case to the Supreme Court, which, the court eventually decided that they should have a new trial. Now, as Sam Shepard and Walter Irvin were being transported for the new trial, they were shot at. Now, sadly, Sam lost his life, but by the grace of God, Walter survived. These two were pretty much, well, not pretty much, they were driven by Sheriff McCall. So according to the sheriff, there was a supposed flat tire. So because of the flat tire, he claims that Sam and Walter tried to overpower him while they were handcuffed to each other, and they decided to overpower him while they know that they're going to get a retrial and try to get free the legal way. And McCall states how he had no choice but to shoot them. Again, they were handcuffed to each other. As for Walter, after he recovered from those injuries, he was like, no, that's not what happened. Sheriff McCall, according to Walter, Sheriff McCall shot he and Sam in cold blood. Harry Moore would go on to write another letter to the governor to try to see if Sheriff McCall could get punished and to punish those who were involved with the shooting. But of course, Sheriff McCall was not punished, which led to the events of Christmas Day of 1951. By Christmas, Harry was pretty much voted out of the position of Executive Secretary of the Florida NAACP because of his political involvement, but was allowed to remain in the organization as an unpaid state coordinator. But he has a family to take care of, so wouldn't it have been helpful at least, maybe even lower his salary or something? But anyways, on top of that, Harry's life was constantly being threatened. There was this one point where the family was out of the house and some people broke in, even taking Harry's shotgun, and just tore up the house. Late at Christmas night of 1951, which was also Harry and Harriette's 25th wedding anniversary, the unexpected happened. The house literally blew up after bombs were planted under the house. The Moores had relatives nearby who heard the explosion. So after hearing the explosion, knowing that it's in the direction of Harry and Harriette's house, the relatives rushed towards the house. Then when they were able to, see the destruction and that, able to go ahead and get to Harry and Harriet, they put the couple into the cars, driving them to the nearest hospital that they could find, because it was really hard to find a hospital that was very close by. Harry and Harriet's daughter Annie and Harry's mom were also in the house, but by God's grace, they were unharmed as they slept in separate rooms. As for their other daughter Juanita, she lived in Washington, and she didn't know what happened to the family until she got back home the next day. Unfortunately, Harry wasn't able to make it to the hospital in time. He passed away on the way to the hospital. But Harriet was still alive and remained in the hospital to at least attempt to recover. But sadly, Harriet would also pass away 9 days after her husband's life was taken and a day after his funeral. After the bombings of the Moore house, it did spark public outrage and received a lot of public attention. A week after the bombing, a black man in the area did tell police how two white men were asking where the Moors lived. Now again, like before the bombings took place, Harry and Sheriff McCall had beef, so it was, natural for people to believe that McCall had something to do with the bombings, but according to investigators, they were just known as rumors and they just could not find any sort of, evidence that supported those rumors being spread about Sheriff McCall. The FBI did get involved with the investigation of the bombing of the Moore house, and they were certain that the KKK were involved. Because they felt like the KKK were involved in the bombings, they were able to get in contact with informants in the KKK. If I even said that last statement right. But as the FBI were investigating Klan members, they were looking at some very dangerous Klan members by the name of Earl Brooklyn, who was believed to have tried to recruit others to help bomb the Moore house. The FBI believed that Brooklyn tried to get these individuals involved by the names of Tillman Belvin, Joseph Cox, and Edward Spivey. What I'm about to say is pretty much out of order, but of course it's all equally disappointing because of how this investigation would turn out. As for Spivey, he passed away in 1978 due to cancer, and there is this alleged deathbed confession of his involvement in the bombing of the Moore house. As for Cox, the thing about him, he took his own life shortly after being confronted by the FBI. So here's my thing about Cox. So, allegedly, you are bold enough to possibly bomb a house, and he was a part of Klan, that's a fact. So you were bold enough to go ahead and start burning crosses outside of houses and all that stuff. But when the FBI faces you, you're not bold enough. As for Belvin and Brooklyn, they would pass away a year after the bombings. So those who possibly had all of the answers most likely took those answers with them to the grave. Because of that, the FBI was like, whoop-de-doo. Well, not whoop-de-doo, but it's like, what can you do? All of them are most of them are pretty much passed away at this point. So why not close the case in 1955? Later on, the case would be reopened, but from what I understood, it was pretty much closed again in 2011. I would assume maybe we'll just close again just because, lack of resources or lack of DNA evidence and lack of people who are still alive who are most likely involved back in 1951. Despite that mess, despite that confusion, overall, unfortunately, there were no arrests made after Harry and Harriet's passing. Because of this, unfortunately, it's a tragedy that Harry and Harriet's daughters would pass away eventually without getting any form of justice, or at least not seeing any form of justice in their lifetime. It's just disheartening to know that wicked, hateful men decided to take these lives on the holiday where we should be celebrating the birth of Jesus Christ, the one who not only died for my sins and everybody else's sins, but Jesus also died for these wicked, hateful sinners who were responsible for taking Harry and Harriet away from their families. It's just sick to think that these monsters were maybe spending time with their families during the holidays one moment, then destroyed another family for the next moment. All because they were fighting for the rights they deserved as Americans. My prayer is that this case will be solved, regardless of people who have since passed. But even if we don't see justice in this lifetime, I know for sure that justice is being served in the next lifetime. The God that I serve, the God of the Bible, is a God of justice. He knows exactly who is responsible for taking the lives of Harry and Harriette, and he will make sure that justice is served. I thank you all for taking the time in your day to watch this video. If you did like this video, please feel free to hit the like button. If you have any thoughts on this case at all, please leave your thoughts in the comment section below. If you'd like to see more videos from me, please feel free to subscribe and click the bell to be notified about the next video. If there is a certain true crime case that you'd like me to cover, go ahead and let me know. I will see y'all for next True Crime Tuesdays, and I will talk to y'all later.